Well, we are in part 2 of this series, Brave, and where we started this journey together last week was, right here, that all of us have a circle of relationships. Your relationships are different than mine. We might have some of the, common relationships, but here's the thing that makes it so vastly different. That you're at the center of your circle and I'm at the center of my circle of relationships. And across the entire circle of relationships, there's different levels of relationships, right? At the very outer are strangers, then acquaintances, then family, or friends, then family. And we get all of that. But as we move today through part 2, through the rest of this series, what I want to do is really kind of shine the spotlight, just kind of hone in on those two inner circles, our friends and our family. Now, in our friend circle, we have friends all over the place. Some are really close to us. Some are really far away from us. Some are moving closer. Some are moving further away, right? We have friends all over that circle. But when it comes to our family circle, there are two very distinct circles within our family circle. At the very kind of inner part of our family circle is, that's our immediate family, our parents or siblings. We didn't get to choose them, right? We got stuck with them. And maybe that's life-giving for you. You had an awesome mom, an awesome dad. Your parents loved each other. You have great siblings, right? Maybe that's life-giving. Or maybe for you, that inner circle is really complicated. Maybe there's a lot of pain and hurt attached to that inner circle. That next family circle is your extended family. Your grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and second cousins, and the list goes on. Now, what's interesting is for me and my wife Kim, we're in a season of transition. You see, our immediate family has changed. Why? Because our older daughter just got married. So she's leaving our immediate circle and she's developing her own with her new husband. And now they have an immediate family circle. And, it doesn't mean I don't love her anymore. It doesn't mean she's still not my daughter. But what I recognize is what the Bible talks about, that we leave and we cleave. We leave our parents and we cleave to our spouse, and the two becomes one. And so Kim and I, we're just in the midst of this. And I never realized how dynamic and emotional, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm super excited for them, but that immediate family circle is now looking different as they establish their own. Now, when we think about these circles, the immediate and the extended family circles, what we know is we all have extended family that we barely know or we haven't talked to in decades. You see, we all have, a friendship circle that's much closer to us than some family. And this is why we have to be intentional when it comes to all of these labels, like friends and family. They're so nuanced as how they're connected to us and how we interact with them. So as we make our way through this series, I just want you to keep this picture in mind. I mentioned in part 1 that we're going to be looking at 5 very specific kind of relational actions that I'm pretty sure you have experienced all of these in the past. Maybe you're going through 1 or 2 or more right now with a relationship. But I want you to keep that relational circle, especially your immediate family, your extended family, your close friends, your extended friends. I want you to keep that all in mind as we look at these 5 very specific areas, these actions that actually divide relationships, create so much hurt and pain in our relationships, and how we face it being brave. Now, this first one we're going to look at today, you have encountered this one if you've ever said or thought, out of all the people in my life, I never thought you would. Now, you can fill in that blank, fill out that blank, but you know what goes in that blank. And the next thought, again, whether you think it, whether you say it out loud, I trusted you. Trusted you. I trusted you. In this series, Brave, we're following along on the storyline of a guy named Joseph. When we first encountered Joseph, he's 17 years old. By the time we get done with this series, he's going to be much, much older. But he's a teenage boy. And we left off in the story last week in Genesis chapter 37, verse 18. And this is where we pause the story. But they, Joseph's brothers, saw him in a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Now, Joseph is living in a really dysfunctional family. Maybe that sounds familiar to you. Maybe you were raised in a dysfunctional family. Maybe you're experiencing a dysfunctional family now. I tell people all the time, all families are dysfunctional. It's just a matter about how dysfunctional are they really. And so Joseph's brothers see him a long way off, and jealousy has just completely consumed them. And they want to get rid of him. They want to kill him. And so they said to each other, hey, here comes the dreamer. In part one, we looked at the two dreams that Joseph had. Both dreams were very similar. The dreams were about the brothers and dad bowing down to Joseph, that Joseph eventually would be in a position of leadership, a position of influence, a position of superiority where he would be over his brothers and his dad. And again, it just created so much jealousy within them. And they said, hey, here comes that dreamer in that mocking tone. They said, come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and tell dad, hey, a ferocious animal devoured him. We couldn't do anything to stop it. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. And as they plotted to, kill their brother, all of a sudden Reuben, he hears this talk and he speaks up. He tries to rescue Joseph from their hands. He goes, let's not take his life. Let's don't kill him. Now on the surface, it looks like Reuben's the hero. On the surface, it's like, way to go, Reuben. You speak up. You look at all of your brothers. You come to Joseph's defense. You save his life. Way to go. But sometimes the surface can deceive you. You see, Reuben's entire motives weren't really that pure. You see, what Reuben knew, what his brothers knew, what the entire family knew is some of the deep dysfunction gets connected right to Reuben. You see, Jacob, dad, had 4 wives. Leah was his first wife, and actually he didn't love Leah. He loved Leah's sister, Rachel. He loved Rachel the most. Now, in this moment of the story, Rachel passed away years before, giving birth to the youngest son, Benjamin. So Rachel's no longer, but Jacob loved Rachel the most. But Laban, Leah and Rachel's dad, tricked Jacob into marrying Leah first, then Rachel. Laban also gave each one of his daughters, Leah and Rachel, a handmaid, a servant. To Leah, he gave Zilpah, and to Rachel, he gave Bilhah. Well, over the course of time, Leah and Rachel decided to give Jacob, their husband, their servants, their handmaids, to Jacob, as the Bible calls them, concubines. Think about them as second wives. I mean, they were wives, but just a slightly lower standard. Now, you might be thinking about that, looking at that, going, really? God was okay with that? God, well, he allowed it, so he must be. No, there's a whole lot of stuff that God has allowed throughout the course of the storyline of the Bible. And in fact, what he allows now that he's not okay with. God designed marriage to be husband, wife, coming together, the two leaving and cleaving, the two becoming one. He was not okay with four. He never was. In fact, if you're really bored, just read the whole Old Testament and just start to circle every time there was more than just husband and wife, how much of a mess was created. Well, Reuben was born first. He was the oldest out of all the boys, the oldest son. And he was born to Leah. The firstborn in ancient times, and we get this to this day, the oldest son, right, has a unique position in a family. And in ancient times, it was the position of influence and authority and leadership. In fact, most of the time, the oldest son got the blessing and the birthright. It was a big deal thousands of years ago. But Reuben had kind of lost that authority and that influence. Why, you might ask? Well, there's one little verse tucked away in Genesis that just lets us into a pretty dark family secret that wasn't so secret. You see, what we discover is that Reuben one day sleeps with his stepmom, Bilhah, and Jacob, his dad, finds out. Again, because family secrets aren't so secret. Can you imagine the dysfunction of that action? And not only did Jacob, dad, know this, all the brothers had to know as well. And so Reuben might look like a hero, but maybe, just maybe, his motivations are a little skewed. So Reuben says, don't shed any blood. Throw him in the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. And we're told that Reuben said this to rescue him from them, the brothers, and to take him back to his father. Now, I read that statement, and I think this reveals a lot. I think the secondary motivation was to save Joseph, yes. But I think the primary motivation was to take Joseph back to dad to say, Dad, by the way, brothers were going to kill your favorite Joseph. The brothers had plotted out, they schemed it out, but I saved your favorite son. I think Reuben was trying to earn back some of that favor, to earn back some of that influence, to say, hey, Dad, I'm really sorry for sleeping with your wife, my stepmom. I'm really sorry for that. He was trying to earn it back to say, hey, Dad, I saved your favorite son, Joseph. So, when Joseph came to his brothers, we're told that they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe. He was wearing that beautiful, colorful robe that Dad, Jacob, gave to Joseph, it just inflamed all the jealousy within the brothers. And they took him and they threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There's no water in it. And as they sat down to eat their meal. Now, this is like comical in not a comical way. I laugh just because I can just picture this moment, even though this wasn't a laughing moment. We discover later on in Genesis that the brothers heard Joseph pleading, begging for his life. So we know he did that. I mean, even if we didn't have that insight later in Genesis, we all know that he would be pleading and begging for his life. Right? He's in the cistern that's empty. The brothers sit down to have lunch, have dinner, have a meal. And Joseph's in there begging for his life. As they eat, as they talk, as they laugh, as they will just kind of ignore Joseph. And as they ate, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites. Another name for Ishmaelites is the Midianites. And so you'll see that interchange. And maybe Midianites kind of rings a thought in your head. You know, we discover the Midianites throughout the Old Testament. Probably one of the most famous Midianites was Moses' father-in-law. He was a Midianite. And so all of a sudden these Ishmaelites, the Midianites, start to come from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. So Judah, another brother, Judah's mom was Leah. He was actually the fourth in the birth order, right? Reuben being the oldest. Judah was number 4. Maybe you like Judah, like you've heard of the tribe of Judah. David was from the tribe of Judah. In fact, Jesus is connected to the tribe of Judah. It's Judah who said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood?" He's like, hey, we could get something out of it if we don't kill him. Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hands on him. After all, he is our brother. By the way, he is flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. So when the Midianites, merchants, came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern. He sold him for 20 shekels. That was kind of a common amount for a slave during that period of time. And they took Joseph to Egypt. But when Reuben returned, and we're not sure where Reuben went, but when he returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, hey, the boy isn't there. Where can I turn now? What am I going to tell Dad? What am I going to do? Now the brothers got together. They had to have some story to tell Dad. So they grabbed the robe, they killed an animal, they covered the robe in blood, and they took it to Dad, knowing that Dad would automatically think that an animal had killed Joseph, and that is exactly what Jacob thought. The brothers tried to console their dad, and Jacob wanted nothing to do with them. And Jacob goes, no, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave. So his father wept for him. And that's where we'll pause the story and pick it up next week in part 3. You see, I think about these 5 very specific actions that divide, create so much tension, so much hurt, so much pain in relationships. And the first one that we discover in this story with Joseph is the action of betrayal. Have you ever been betrayed before? I have. And what's interesting with betrayal is so many times when we are betrayed, we look at the surface action, the surface issue, and so much attention is given to how the person betrayed us. But in all reality, the foundational pain that gets connected to betrayal, the foundational issue that drives the pain and hurt for betrayal is it's the absolute obliteration of trust. Again, think about the circles of relationships. Think about your immediate family. Think about that really close friend circle. It's the obliteration of trust. Those who you think you could trust the most. You see, the closer the relationship, the deeper the hurt. And the deeper the hurt, the greater the urge to retaliate. I mean, how much hurt did Joseph just experience? You're talking about the obliteration of trust from his brothers. Those in his inner circles. Those in his immediate family. Out of all the people in the world, who should you trust? Have to trust? Those in your immediate family. Could you imagine Joseph in that cistern begging his brothers for his life? And they chose to eat a meal. As they sat up laughing and joking and telling stories and eating. And he's like, really? Brothers, I'm your flesh and blood. But something happened within Joseph. And instead of retaliating, which he could have, and we'll see that as we make our way through this series, Joseph recalibrated. And that's my encouragement for you and for me, that when we are betrayed, when that trust is absolutely obliterated, to refuse to retaliate and choose to recalibrate. So how do we do this, you ask? How do we do this? The answer is really simple. In fact, it's so simple, for some of you, you're just going to want to dismiss me. For some of you, you're just going to like, yep, that's a pastor. It's church speak. It's Bible speak. That doesn't work. It can't be like that. That's not real life. I'm just going to tell you, this is the answer of how to recalibrate and start to heal the broken, obliterated trust within us. And just maybe if we do that, just maybe, we can start to close the divide. This is the first step. And these are in order of importance, the orders of which we have to do this when someone betrays us. Step number one, immediately we have to go to God. I said, for some of you might think, okay, that's preacher speak. That's church speak. I'm just telling you, that is the step. When someone obliterates our trust, when someone betrays us, the number one step to recalibrate our broken heart is to go directly to God. You see, King David, knew what it was like for someone to betray him. In fact, he wrote an entire psalm, a song about this. He writes these words to God. Listen to what he writes. He goes, if an enemy were insulting me, I could endure it. If a foe were rising against me, I could hide. Think about the circles of relationship. What David is pointing out here is there's people on the outer circles, right? Enemies, foes. They're the strangers, acquaintances. Those people, right? He's like, hey, if those people attack me, that feels one way, and we all get that. We've all been betrayed from people on the outer circles, and right, we just move through it. It might bother us for a few moments, but we just move right through it. But then David goes, but it's you, a man like myself, my companion, my what? Close friend. David's just calling out what all of us know. When we're betrayed by those people closest to us, when our trust is obliterated by those closest to us, it's completely different, isn't it? And then he writes, with whom I once enjoyed sweet fellowship at the house of God, as we walked about among the worshipers. I mean, let's move this into our modern day language. What David is saying here, if he would be writing this to this day, he'd be saying, hey, I showed up at church. I grabbed a cup of coffee and a donut. I saw you across the lobby. I walked up to you. You high-fived me. You hugged me. We talked. We laughed. I mean, we sat at church together. We worshiped together. We served together. We led together at church. We prayed for each other. We helped each other when we needed help. We have this great spiritual friendship. It was you. Not someone on the outer circles. Someone who was closest to me. And then David writes, but as for me, I called to God and the Lord saves me. Evening, morning, and noon, I cry out in distress, and he hears my voice. You've got to go to God. First, priority number one, when you're betrayed, the only way to avoid trying to retaliate, which will lead you down a path of bitterness, and it'll eat you from the inside out, and it will devour every relationship connected to you. The only way is to recalibrate. And how do you do that? You have to start with God. It's what David tells us to do. Just go to God, and he will hear. Cry out to him. He's going to listen. Share with him the entire story. God has you. And that one will always drive you to number 2, to forgive. Now again, you might be like, oh, Chris, here we go again. Another church answer. But that is the answer. When you go to God, I'm just going to tell you, you know what God's going to say to you? You have to forgive. And so many times people, they kind of misposition forgiveness. There's another word in the Bible, it's reconciliation. And most people connect forgiveness with reconciliation. Reconciliation is all about two people coming together to reconcile. Right? That's closing the gap. That's closing the divide. It's coming together. But here's the thing with reconciliation. Both people have to desire to heal what has been broken. If only one person wants to and the other doesn't, it can never be reconciled. It takes both people. You know the thing with forgiveness? It only takes one. You. And do you know that the heartbeat, the goal of forgiveness is embedded in the word forgive? You know what it is? It's to give. Forgiveness is about you giving something to someone. You saying, I forgive you. You haven't earned it. You don't even deserve it. But I'm going to choose to release it. And when you start with number 1, when you look at God, when you go to God, guess what you're going to hear him say? You got to forgive. And as soon as you say, but God, I don't want to forgive. And I've been there. You've been there, right? I don't want to forgive. And all of a sudden God goes, think about how much I have forgiven you. And the more we grasp God's forgiveness for us, the more we will be compelled, we will be moved to extend that gift to that person who hasn't earned it, who doesn't deserve it. Why? Because we don't deserve and we can't earn God's forgiveness that he's already given us. And it moves to number 3. We've got to seek wisdom. Go to a spiritual leader, someone who's not directly connected to that relational betrayal, and just seek wisdom, guidance. Spiritual leader who's not directly connected. This is so important. This summer, my wife and I had several people message us, show up at our house to sit down with us to seek wisdom. I'm not saying I'm the wisest person, but they just wanted to seek wisdom to navigate a very difficult relational situation. And I said to both of them, I'm just so thankful that you were proactive. They talked about forgiveness. They talked about their hurt, but they talked about how do I move forward? Do I reconcile? Don't I reconcile? What does that even look like? What do I do with this broken, fractured relationship? At what level we just had so many really good conversations around something so difficult. You need to seek wisdom. Now, as the story moves forward, Joseph gets to Egypt. He's sold to a guy named Potiphar, and this is such an important moment. He's sold to Potiphar, and the storyteller tells us that, the Lord was with Joseph. Really important. Hold on to that. That God was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. He prospered. Now, at this point, Joseph is around 17 years old. This is really important. As we make our way through the rest of the story of Joseph, when we get to Genesis chapter 50, Joseph is right around 56 years old. So there's a 39-year span here that we're going to cover following this story of Joseph and his brothers and his dad. Now, in Genesis chapter 50, Jacob, dad, passes away. We also know that, Joseph lives until he's 110 before he passes away. But in Genesis 50, there's this 39-year gap. Dad dies, and all of a sudden the brothers come to Joseph. and they're freaking out. They're freaking out. They're freaking out. Why? Because, well, they don't have dad to protect them anymore. And they just know that Joseph, brother, is going to get back at them after 39 years. Now, when they come to Joseph, Joseph says something to them. And I want to share this now because I just tell you, I think these words that Joseph shares with his brothers, the brothers that betrayed him, the brothers that wanted to kill him, the brothers that sold him, I think these words God started to etch on Joseph's heart on the journey from that cistern to Egypt. Joseph says to his brothers, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. I think about these words. As Joseph looks at his brothers, he's like, man, it's been 39 years since you sold me. But you just have to know, brothers, you intended to harm me. But guess what? Over this journey, I have seen God's good. What you wanted to do to me, you can't, because God is leading my steps. What you desired to leverage against me, you have no power because God is involved. I just think about these words. These are words of hope as relationships are filled with hurt. And I don't know what you're facing right now, what a relational tension, the relational divide, what you're navigating. I just want you to not just hold on to these words, I want you to memorize these words. And maybe as you go to God, say, hey, God, what that person, you fill in the name, what that person has intended to do to me, God, I'm going to trust you to do good. How that person so intentionally tried to hurt me, God, I'm looking for your good. Because I trust that out of my hurt, out of my pain, that if I keep my eyes on you, I extend forgiveness, I seek wisdom, wise counsel, that God, I'm just going to trust that one day, at one moment, your good is going to surface, even in my hurt and even in my pain. You see what I want to encourage you with is when you look up, when you go to God, say these words to him. And it might take months, it might take years, who knows? But trust that a good God is working for the good. Let's pray. I pray that those words that are some 39 years in the making for Joseph, words several thousand years ago, that are so true for us to this day. Lord, I pray that every single person will read those words, will memorize those words, will embed those words within their soul, trusting you, a good God, that God, you can take anything in our lives and turn it for your good. And I've seen it happen personally. So, Lord, may we trust you in that. May we lean into you for that. In your name I pray. Amen.